The question that never left me. The night was quiet. The kind of quiet that only comes when the city finally falls asleep. I sat alone in my living room, the lights dim, a single candle flickering on the table beside me. The shadows on the wall seemed alive, as if they were listening to the thoughts that refused to leave my mind. People often see me as strong, calm, maybe even untouchable. They see the actor, the fame, the smile. But inside me, there is a question that has lived for years, pressing against my chest like an unspoken truth. Why was I never with Sandra Bullock? We had chemistry that people still talk about. On screen, it looked like magic. Off screen, there was laughter, respect, kindness, and something that felt almost sacred. But the years passed, and while our paths crossed, they never stayed together. She went her way, I went mine. And though I lived a full life, though I gave and received love, that question never stopped whispering in the back of my soul. I remember one night after an award show, when Sandra and I shared a quiet conversation away from the cameras. Her smile was warm, her eyes filled with light. She touched my arm and said, "We always had perfect timing in the wrong places." I laughed, but later that night as I lay in bed, those words cut deeper than she could ever know. Years later, the silence of my home became a mirror, and in that silence I whispered the question I had never dared to speak out loud. Jesus, why was she never mine? The moment the words left my mouth, the air shifted. It was subtle at first, like the softest breeze, but it carried weight. I closed my eyes, not expecting anything, but then I felt it. The kind of presence you cannot explain. It wasn't thunder, it wasn't fire. It was peace. A peace so deep that it terrified me because it knew me completely. Then, in that peace, a voice spoke. It wasn't loud. It didn't echo through the room, but it reached my heart in a way no human voice ever could. You ask me why, Keanu, and I will tell you. But know this, the truth will break you before it heals you. My hands trembled. I had faced loss before. I had walked through grief that nearly destroyed me. But this moment felt different. It was personal, it was raw, it was a truth I had avoided for years. She was not meant to be yours, the voice said softly, because her role in your life was not to stay, but to show you something about yourself that you could not see without her. I felt my chest tighten, as if my heart resisted the words. But why? I whispered, tears pressing at the corners of my eyes. We were good together. We respected each other. We were kind. Wasn't that enough? Silence followed, but it was not an empty silence. It was the silence of someone who waits for you to breathe, to accept, to listen. Then the voice spoke again. Love is not always meant to be possession. Sometimes love is meant to be reflection. She reflected the man you wanted to become, the man of patience, humility, and deep respect. Without her, you may not have known that part of yourself. She was a mirror, not a destination. The tears came then, slow at first, then heavy. I felt like a child again, vulnerable, raw, asking for answers I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. My mind filled with memories. Her laugh on the set, her kind gestures when no one was looking, the way she treated everyone with equal respect, from the director to the person serving coffee. And I realized she had taught me more about kindness than I had ever admitted to myself. But if she was a mirror, I whispered, my voice breaking, why does it still hurt? Why does it still feel like I lost something I never even had? The answer came gently but with weight, because the lesson of the mirror is the hardest one. You do not just see her, you see what she awakened in you. And you fear that without her, that part of you will fade. But it will not. It lives in you now. That is the gift. I sat in the dim light, my hands over my face, my heart both broken and strangely full. The truth did break me. But in that breaking, I felt something new, something like a quiet seed being planted. The voice grew softer, almost fading, but I caught the last words. You asked why she was not yours. The answer is simple, because she was meant to remind you of the man you were always meant to be. And just like that, the presence was gone. The candle still flickered, the shadows still moved, but the room felt different now. Heavier yet lighter, I leaned back in my chair, tears still on my face, and whispered into the night, "Thank you." And in that moment, I knew my life had just changed. The night after the answer, the next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a heavy heart. The sunlight spilled through the curtains, but it did not feel like light. It felt like a weight pressing on my chest, reminding me of the voice I had heard the night before. I moved slowly, every step heavy with the memory of those words. She was a mirror, not a destination. I kept repeating it as if saying it out loud would make it easier to believe. But belief does not come easy when your heart wants something your soul has been denied. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, and stood by the window. Outside, the city carried on as if nothing had happened. Cars passed, people hurried, lives unfolded. But inside me, a storm raged. What do you do when you receive an answer from God that you never wanted? What do you do when the truth feels like both a gift and a punishment? That day, I avoided calls, emails, and work. I sat with myself, something I rarely allowed. I thought about Sandra. Not as the world saw her, but as I remembered her. The way she cared for stray dogs on set. The way she always had a kind word for the crew. The way she never let fame make her cruel. I remembered one night years ago when we were filming. It was late and everyone was tired, but Sandra stayed behind to help a stagehand carry boxes. She didn't need to. No one asked her to, but she did. And that night I thought to myself, she is not just beautiful, she is good. The voice's words returned. She reflected the man you wanted to become. I wondered if I had truly lived up to that reflection. Had I become the man she once showed me I could be? Or had I let life, grief, and fame bury that version of me under layers of silence? The hours passed, but the question grew louder. I found myself back in the chair from last night, staring at the same candle that had burned itself down. Jesus, I whispered again. If she was only a mirror, then what am I supposed to do with this love that never found a home? What am I supposed to do with this ache that has lived inside me for so long? The air shifted once more, not as strong as before, but enough for me to feel it. This time the voice was softer, like a parent speaking gently to a child. Love does not vanish just because it cannot be possessed. Love is energy, Keanu. It must move. If you lock it away, it will turn into sorrow. But if you release it, it will turn into light. Release it? I asked, my throat tight. How? How do you release something you never truly held? By giving it forward, the voice replied. Every act of kindness, every word of humility, every moment of compassion, you are not just doing it for the world. You are carrying the love you felt for her and planting it into the lives of others. In this way, her presence never leaves you. It multiplies. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I saw love differently. It was not a locked box that I had lost the key to. It was a river, always flowing, waiting for me to stop damming it with my grief. But the human heart is stubborn. What if I am too late? I asked. What if I wasted years holding on to something that should have been set free? The silence stretched for a long time. I almost thought the presence had left me. But then the words came, clear and steady. You are never too late to love better. Even broken love can become holy when you choose to share it. The tears returned, but this time they were not heavy. They felt cleansing, as if the storm inside me had found its first crack of light. That night I didn't light a candle. I didn't need to. Instead, I wrote a letter. Not to send, not to keep, but to release. I wrote to Sandra, thanking her for every laugh, every smile, every kindness. I told her how much she had taught me, even without knowing it. And then at the end, I wrote the words I had never dared to write before. Thank you for being my mirror. I will carry that reflection forward. I folded the letter, placed it in a small wooden box, and whispered a prayer over it. And as I did, I realized something powerful. I had always been searching for closure, but closure was never the gift. Transformation was. As I lay down to sleep, my heart lighter than it had been in years, I felt the voice whisper one last time. You asked me why she was never yours. Now live as if the answer was never meant to destroy you, but to free you. The journey into reflection. The days that followed felt different, almost fragile, like walking on glass. Every small thing carried new meaning. The smile of a stranger, the laughter of a child on the street, even the way sunlight touched the buildings. It all seemed alive, as if the world was gently reminding me of what the voice had said. Love must move. Love must flow. But even with this new light, the ache did not vanish. Pain has a way of sitting in the corners of your heart, waiting for moments of silence. And in the silence, I still felt the old question pressing on me. Why her? Why not us? I tried to carry the voice's answer. But life does not heal in a single night. Some mornings I woke with hope. Other mornings I woke with a heaviness that felt endless. And in those mornings I wondered if I was truly strong enough to transform this ache into kindness. One evening I went for a long walk through the city. The streets were busy, filled with noise, but inside me was only the quiet sound of my own thoughts. As I walked, I saw a man sitting on the sidewalk holding a small cardboard sign. His clothes were worn, his eyes tired, but when I looked closer, I saw something familiar. Loneliness. I stopped. For a moment, I almost walked past, but then I remembered the words, "Give it forward." I sat down next to him, not as Keanu the actor, not as someone the world watched, but as a man. We spoke. His name was Michael. He had lost his job, then his family. He said he used to play piano for his daughter, but now he hadn't seen her in years. His voice cracked when he spoke of her. I listened, really listened, and in his story, I felt the reflection again. The love I once thought was trapped inside me began to move. I didn't have answers for him. I didn't try to fix his pain. I just shared presence, the way Sandra once shared presence with me. Before I left, I placed some money in his hand and said, "Your story matters. Don't let it disappear inside you. Keep it alive." He looked at me with tears in his eyes, and in that moment I understood what the voice meant. Love released becomes light. That night, back in my quiet room, I whispered another question into the stillness. "Jesus, if love is to be given forward, then why does it still feel like I am carrying a wound that refuses to close?" The air shifted again. This time the presence was not just gentle, it was firm, like a hand on my shoulder. Because healing is not forgetting. Healing is remembering differently. Your wound does not close by erasing Sandra from your heart. It closes when you choose to let her presence guide you instead of haunt you. I felt my breath catch, remembering differently. I thought of all the times I replayed the what-ifs, the scenes of us together that never happened, the life that never was. Those memories always ended with loss, with emptiness. But what if I remembered differently? What if I remembered not the absence, but the gift she had been? As I sat with this thought, an image returned to me. It was a day on set when Sandra and I were rehearsing. I had stumbled over a line, frustrated with myself. But she laughed and said, "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present." At the time, it felt like a simple joke. But now, years later, those words came back like a truth I had missed. Presence over perfection. The voice spoke again. Softer now. She gave you pieces of wisdom. Not to hold in sorrow, but to live by. Presence over perfection. Humility over pride. Kindness over fame. These are the treasures she left with you. And treasures are not meant to be buried. They are meant to be shared. I leaned forward, my hands trembling, because I realized the question I had carried for so long was not just about love, it was about purpose. Perhaps the truth was never about why we were not together. Perhaps the truth was about who I was meant to become because of her. Tears filled my eyes, but this time they did not feel like loss. They felt like release. I stood up, walked to the same wooden box where I had placed the letter and whispered, "I will carry your light forward, Sandra, not as pain, but as presence." And for the first time in decades, the ache in my heart did not feel like an enemy. It felt like a teacher. The test of the promise. The morning after I whispered those words over the wooden box, I woke with a strange calm. It wasn't joy, it wasn't sadness, but something in between. A balance I had never felt before. It was as if my heart had finally found a place to rest, even if just for a little while. But peace never comes without a test. That same week, I was invited to a charity event. I had agreed months before, not knowing how heavy my heart would feel when the date arrived. I thought of canceling, but something inside me whispered, "Go." So I went. The ballroom was filled with light and voices, laughter echoing against chandeliers. People greeted me, shook my hand, smiled at me like they always did. But inside I felt like a man carrying a quiet secret. Then across the room I saw her. Sandra. Time seemed to slow. She looked the same yet different. Her hair shone under the lights. Her smile was as kind as ever. She was speaking to someone, laughing gently, her hand resting on the stem of a glass. For a moment I couldn't breathe. All the words of the voice, all the promises I had made to myself, felt fragile in that instant. My heart whispered, "Go to her." But my fear whispered louder, "Stay away." I stood frozen, caught between the man I used to be and the man I was trying to become. Finally, she noticed me. Her eyes lit up and she walked over, her smile soft, genuine. "Keanu," she said warmly. "It's been too long." Her voice carried the same comfort it always had. I smiled, though my chest felt heavy. "Too long," I replied. "We talked. Small things at first, life, work, friends. But beneath it all, there was a river of unspoken memories, a current that pulled at me, At one point, she laughed and touched my arm, and in that moment, every old ache came rushing back. Later that night after the event, I walked home alone. The city lights blurred in my eyes, not from rain, but from the tears I held back. As soon as I entered my quiet home, I sat in the chair again, the same place where I had heard the voice. My heart ached with a new question. Jesus, I whispered, how do I live with this? I saw her tonight, and every part of me wanted to hold on. How do I honor the lesson when the wound still feels alive? The air grew still, heavier than before. Then the voice spoke. This is the test of your promise. You asked me why she was never yours, and I told you. You asked me what to do with your love, and I told you. But knowing is not the same as living. Tonight I let you see her, not to break you, but to strengthen you. Strengthen me? I asked bitterly. It felt like you were tearing me open again. Strength comes from choosing the harder path, the voice said. Any man can cling to what he cannot have, but it takes a different man to let love exist without chains. When you saw her tonight, did you not also see her joy? Did you not see her light? Let that be enough. I leaned forward, my hand shaking. But it hurts, I whispered. Yes, the voice said gently, because real love always carries ache. But ache does not have to destroy you. It can purify you. The question is not whether you feel pain, but what you do with it. I thought of Michael, the man on the street. I thought of the way sharing presents had lit a spark in his tired eyes. I thought of the letter I had written to Sandra, thanking her for being my mirror. Then I realized the ache was not a punishment. It was a reminder. Every time I felt it, I had a choice. Hold it inside until it poisoned me, or release it as light into the world. That night, instead of drowning in sorrow, I did something different. I opened a journal and wrote down 3 ways I could turn my love into action. First, I would sponsor shelters that cared for animals, because I remembered how much Sandra loved them. Second, I would fund programs for struggling artists because art had been both of our sanctuaries. Third, I would give more of my time, not just money, to listen to those who felt unseen, because that was something she had always done with grace. As I closed the journal, I felt the ache again, but it was softer, lighter, almost like a companion, and the voice whispered one last time before the night ended. Tonight you were tested. Tomorrow you will live. Remember, Keanu, she was not meant to be yours, but through her reflection you can now belong more fully to the world. I wiped my tears, closed my eyes, and let sleep take me, knowing the journey was not over, but the path had begun. The breaking point, the next weeks, felt like walking through both shadow and light. I kept my promise to myself. I gave more of my time. I supported causes that mattered, and I tried to live with presence instead of perfection. But the human heart is not steady like stone. It wavers, it bends, and sometimes it breaks. One evening, after a long day, I found myself back in that chair, staring at the wooden box with the letter inside. I had not opened it since the night I wrote it, but now something inside me pushed me to. I lifted the lid, unfolded the paper, and read my own words. Thank you for being my mirror. I will carry that reflection forward. As I read, my chest grew tight. My hands shook. The ache I thought I had learned to live with came rushing back like a wave that had been waiting just beyond the shore. And for the first time in a long time, I broke. I cried. Deep, heavy sobs that tore out of me. I cried for the love that never found a home. I cried for the years of silence, for the laughter I remembered, for the what-ifs that would never be answered. I cried for the boy inside me who still wanted to be chosen. When the tears slowed, I whispered into the empty room, Jesus, I don't understand. I try to give it forward. I try to live with kindness. But some nights it still feels like I am nothing but broken pieces. How can a mirror build me when I feel so shattered? The room was quiet for a long time. So quiet I thought no answer would come. But then the air shifted and the voice returned, steadier than ever. Keanu, listen carefully. You believe that being broken is failure. But brokenness is not the end. Brokenness is the place where I begin. My breath caught. You call yourself shattered, the voice continued. But look closer. Shattered glass does not lose its light, it reflects it even more. Every break, every crack, every wound you carry allows light to pass through in ways it never could if you were whole. I held my face in my hands, trembling. So the pain, it has purpose? Yes, the voice said softly. Not all pain is punishment. Some pain is preparation. You ache because your love was real. And real love does not die. It transforms. Through your cracks, others will see the light you now carry. Your brokenness will not destroy you, it will reveal you. Those words struck me deeper than anything before. I remembered Michael's tears when I listened to him on the street. I remembered the way children in shelters smiled when I visited. I remembered the quiet thank yous from strangers when I chose to sit with them instead of rushing away. Each of those moments had come not from my strength, but from my brokenness. From the ache I had tried so long to hide, I whispered, "So you mean, the love I never had was never wasted?" "Never wasted," the voice answered. "The love you carry is eternal. What matters is not who holds it with you, but what you do with it." I leaned back, exhausted, my tears drying on my face. For years I had thought my story was about loss, about what I was denied. But now I saw it differently. My story was about what I was entrusted with, the chance to turn longing into light. Later that week I returned to the streets where I had met Michael. I didn't see him, but I saw others, faces tired, eyes searching. I sat again, not as an actor, not as a name, but as a man. I listened. I laughed, I cried with them. And each time I did, I felt the ache inside me shift. It was no longer just sorrow. It was fuel. It was power. It was love moving the way it was always meant to move. But one night, as I walked home after hours of listening to strangers' stories, I looked up at the sky and asked one last question, one that had haunted me for years. Jesus, will I ever know a love that stays? Or am I only meant to carry reflections forever? The sky was quiet. No answer came that night. But deep inside me, I felt a new whisper. Not from the voice, but from within myself. Maybe the love that stays is not found in one person. Maybe it is found in the countless lives you choose to touch. And for the first time, I believed it. The final answer time moved forward the way it always does, quiet but certain. Weeks turned into months, and I began to notice something I had never seen before. The ache was still there, yes, but it no longer ruled me. It lived inside me like an old scar, visible, sometimes tender, but no longer bleeding. I gave more of myself. I spent time in shelters, I visited hospitals, I sat with people who had no one else to sit with them. Each time I remembered what the voice had said. Love must move. And so I let it move through my words, my actions, my presence, but deep down, I still carried one last question. Not about Sandra, not about the ache, but about myself. Jesus, I whispered one night, have I done enough? Have I truly lived the lesson? Or am I still just a man lost in his own reflection? This time, the air shifted stronger than ever. It felt as if the whole room was alive with presence thick and overwhelming. I closed my eyes and the voice filled me with a power I could not describe. "Keanu," the voice said firmly, "you asked me why Sandra was never yours, and I told you. You asked me what to do with your love, and I showed you. But tonight I give you the final answer." My heart pounded. The truth is this: she was never meant to be your ending, because your story was never about one love. Your story was about many loves, scattered, broken, unexpected, but all holy. Every soul you touched, every life you lifted, every stranger you sat beside, those are your love stories. And they will outlive you. My eyes burned with tears. But what about the ache? I whispered. Why does it never disappear? The voice softened. Because the ache is your reminder. It keeps you human. It keeps you humble. It keeps you kind. Without the ache, you would forget what it means to long. And without longing, you would forget what it means to love. Do not curse the ache, Keanu. Carry it. It is not your enemy. It is your anchor. I broke down then, not with the same despair as before, but with a release so deep it felt like freedom. All these years I had thought my unanswered question was a curse, but now I saw it was a gift, a holy wound that kept my heart open when the world tried to close it. That night I did something I had never done before. I lit a candle not to ask questions, not to cry out, but to give thanks. Thank you, I whispered, for the ache, for the mirror, for the lesson. Thank you for not giving me what I wanted, so you could give me what I needed. And as the flame flickered, I felt a peace that was not fragile, not temporary, but whole. The next morning, I walked through the city, and everywhere I looked I saw reflections, in the eyes of strangers, in the laughter of children, in the kindness of small gestures. The world itself had become my mirror, and I finally understood. It was never about Sandra. It was never about what I lost. It was always about the love I was meant to give. As I stood on the street corner watching life move around me, I whispered one last time, not in sorrow, but in gratitude. Jesus, your answer did break me, but it also remade me. And with that, I walked forward, broken but full of light.